All right, Neil, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Let's just start off right away with Kyle McCord. And what are your expectations for McCord this season?
Well, thanks for having me on, Jackson. As always, I really appreciate you, brother. I expect him to lead them to the CFP and win the Heisman. That's my expectations for this season. I mean,
hey, you know what? Right off the bat, you're jumping off with fire here.
Why sugarcoat it? I think that I'm just really fascinated by this upcoming season. Obviously, the excitement, the hype built around Fran Brown and his staff, the recruiting, both at the high school level in 2024, 25, et cetera. And then obviously at the transfer portal with Kyle McCord and other really strong players. I think Kyle McCord, he was solid at Ohio State. I'm sure Buckeyes fans might have things to say, good or bad, about him. But last time I checked, they were 11-1 last year. They're in the regular season when he was there, with their only loss to the eventual national champion, Michigan. And I think he threw for like over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, that's solid. Did they expect more in Columbus? That's for them to talk about. I think that Kyle is going to fit right in well. He's from New Jersey. He's known multiple Syracuse coaches since he was a kid. And I think he's coming in. He's going to lead the team, obviously. I think the offense can be really good this year because it's going to be much better balanced than last year or even other recent seasons, given Kyle as the signal caller, plus all their weapons at tight end and wide receiver, and then a nice running back room. So if knock on wood, if the offensive line holds up, I think they could be a solid, strong offensive team. So is Kyle going to be, on the all ACC first team? I don't know. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the ACC, but this is no disrespect to Garrett Schrader because he was also injured for a lot of last year, but this is certainly an upgrade, again, assuming Kyle remains injury-free, and I think he's going to have a good year.
I agree with you. I think the difference between McCord and Schrader, just by the brief amount that we've watched of McCord, especially in a Syracuse uniform, I'm really only going to take the spring game.
Sure.
It's the zip on the ball.
Yeah.
It's the zip. Like, I don't really know how else to describe it. Other than it looks significantly different. I used to say with Garrett Schrader, when he throws the ball, it looks like he's really putting a lot of effort into it. Mm-hmm. And the ball comes out and it looks like a lollipop. It almost looks like it's like rainbowing out of him. He was pretty good, but he clearly had his limitations, especially because he's a converted wide receiver.
Sure.
He was a wide receiver. Kyle McCord was a 5-star high school prospect. Mm-hmm. Maybe he didn't live up to the crazy expectations that you're going to have at Ohio State, right? The 3 quarterbacks that came before him were all first-round NFL draft picks.
Sure.
But, yeah, he was a top 10 quarterback in the country on quarterback rating. Mm-hmm. Top 10 in the country. And I get he had weapons and all of that. But we're going to find out this season with their new quarterback just how good or can anyone go into the Ohio State offense and play decent ball.
Right. Yeah. And you're right about Schrader. And I really liked him as a football player. He's tough. He was going through injuries, definitely not as skilled, quote unquote, in terms of a pocket passer as Kyle McCord, but he could run the ball and he just gave it his all. So, hats off to him. And I really loved him from that standpoint. But you're right about Kyle. He can sling it. I mean, he really can. So if he's gelling with this receiver room, whether it's Gadsden and Villari and Jamie Trumbull at tight end and all the traditional wide receivers, both, returnees and transfers and, high school commits, they've got a lot of weapons. They really do. And yep. So if they're all gelling and the offense is gelling under the rest of the staff, I think they can be really good. Are they going to be the best offense in the ACC? I don't know. Who knows?
I saw a recent rating out there that had them in like the way bottom half, and I was like, I don't know about that. I think they're going to have a pretty good offense.
I always acknowledge my homerism. I went to Syracuse, obviously, right? Lead a fan site and all that, but I'm not afraid to call it like I see it as well. And the Syracuse offense last year had a rough go, especially after Schrader got injured. And, Villari doing the Wildcat and all that, and they were really limited. LeQuint Allen had a good year, but this year again, knock on wood, stay away from injuries, they have, I think, really solid depth. I think they have really solid depth across the board in most position groups. But again, between Kyle and then the receiver room and the running backs, I think this could be a really fun year. And I think Kyle, I think he could, he was like you said, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of, I think it was St. Joe's Prep in Philly. He was a 4-star, highly rated prospect in the transfer portal. A lot, some national pundits were like, why did he go to Syracuse? That's a step down and all that. And, that's fine. Those are optics, but
sorry to cut you off here.
No.
Most schools going to be a step down from Ohio State. How many schools are a better standing than Ohio State? You might be able to, you can only really count it on your palm. Georgia? Well, they're set at Georgia.
Yeah, no.
Alabama is set.
Alabama, sure. Oregon's going to be really good this year. You've got,
Michigan. Like, you're not going to go from Ohio State to Michigan. You can't do that.
I think the thing, it was just so fascinating after he transferred to Syracuse and all the pundits saying stuff. Some was positive, some was negative nonsense. I mean, I get it. Syracuse obviously, has an historical brand, but in recent seasons under Dino Babers, no disrespect, I think he's a really nice guy, but they went to a couple bowls, but they were not nationally relevant, and they weren't really all that relevant since joining the ACC. And even in the last 2 years, they went to 2 bowl games, fine, but they started off 6-0 and then 4-0, but they ended up 13-13 combined. So there, for a guy like Kyle to transfer from Ohio State to Syracuse maybe leaves some people scratching their heads. But again, you got to dig deeper and look at the context. Fran Brown and multiple assistants are from New Jersey, the Philadelphia area. They've known him since he was a kid. Yeah. That kind of connection, that speaks volumes. So I get it. Ohio State is up here and Syracuse is certainly not anywhere near that. But who knows where Fran Brown's going to lead the Orange? And I think it could be a really good fit given those long-standing relationships and given the targets that McCord is going to have to throw to between receivers, tight ends, and running backs out of the backfield.
He definitely has the upside to be an all-ACC quarterback. I did see online out there, they released the preseason all-ACC team. Keep in mind, well, McCord didn't make it, but keep in mind, they only took one quarterback, and it was only the first team that they released. That was it. Right. So I think Cam Ward from Miami made it.
It was Cam Ward,
Cam Ward was the 4th-ranked transfer quarterback in the country. McCord was down at 14th.
Right.
And Cam Ward was a top 15 overall transfer in the country. So I completely understood it, and it's one of those things where I think McCord has the upside to being a first-teamer. I certainly think he could be on the first, second, or third team at the end of the season. But, for now, preseason first team, I'm not so sure. But I do have high hopes for Kyle McCord this season. All right, Neil, let's talk about the backup quarterbacks.
Sure.
Because we have kind of alluded to it, that if McCord stays healthy, with those weapons around him, actually in yesterday's podcast, I talked about LeQuint Allen and Will Nixon and Yassine Willis, the true freshman, and they got some dudes. They got some weapons. And the offensive line, it maybe is a work in progress, but we'll see how it all shapes out over the course of training camp.